Hey, Grace Central, hope you're doing well. Time for another Q&A. I've been getting some questions about calling to ministry and what is a call and how does a person know if they're called, presumably to ministry in the church or something like that. So just a few things to think about if that's a question you've had. First is obviously, if we're talking about a call to ministry, then the call has to be biblical in some way. It can't be unbiblical. So in other words, if you're thinking maybe I'm called to be a meth dealer, probably not called to be a meth dealer. Doesn't meet the biblical criteria. It's not biblically permissible. And then there's biblical criteria in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and in Titus, character requirements for those who are called to certain kinds of ministry in the church, certain kinds of ordained leadership in the church. But beyond that, beyond being biblically permissible, I think there's really three things that a person wants to look for to discern if they're called into ministry or some kind of ministry. The first is an inner desire. There's got to be some inner sense that you're called to it. And when I use the word desire, I don't even necessarily mean that it's something that you are enthusiastic about or that you want to do, although that would be there. We hope that's there. But it could begin as a sense that it's something you ought to be doing, a sense that you are obligated by God in some way to be doing this. Or it could be just an inner desire to use your gifts and your capacities to serve the church in that way. So an inner desire. But the second thing that's really important, is absolutely vital, is outward affirmation. So you might have somebody who has an inner desire to be in ministry, to serve the church in some way, but there really aren't any voices in the person's life saying, hey, we identify you as somebody who has the character and the skills and the giftings to serve in this way. Then maybe you're not called, even if you want to be. If nobody in your life or no church is outwardly affirming you in that desire, then maybe it's a good reason to kind of put the brakes on that and to wait and see what happens. So an inner desire, an outward affirmation by the church community, and then third is the opportunity. Does the opportunity present itself for you to lead or to serve in ministry in that way? You might have the inner desire and a church community may say, hey, we think you're gifted for this, but then God never opens the door for you to serve in that way. Then the question is kind of answered itself, at least for the time being. You're not called. So inner desire, outward affirmation, opportunity. Those are really the three things. That's kind of how you triangulate a call to ministry. And then I would just add that those three things don't always arrive at the same time. For instance, the inner desire may not be there at the beginning. We know, for instance, John Calvin, the Protestant reformer, he did not want to be a pastor. He wanted to be a scholar, but the need in Geneva presented itself. It kind of imposed itself on him, and his friend John Flavel convinced him to stay and be the pastor in Geneva. We know St. Augustine, for instance, did not want to be a priest, didn't want to serve the church in that way. He just wanted to be a monk and to think and write his books. But in the church, there was a great need, and he was, the story is he was ordained almost against his will, that he was dragged to his own ordination ceremony. So occasionally, the inner desire is the last thing to come along. Sometimes it's the first thing that's there. But those are the three you want to look for. Do you have an inner desire to do it? Has the church outwardly affirmed your giftedness for it? And then does the opportunity present itself? And of course, all of that underneath the umbrella of do you meet the biblical character requirements for whatever it is that you feel called to? So yeah, that's calling. Listen, keep sending me your questions and answers. Also, keep in mind that through this pandemic, Grace Central is going to continue to need your financial support. If you're somebody who supports the church financially, please continue to do that. All right, thanks a lot. See you guys soon.